Heal me. Show me the way.
Show me the way.
I need your help. Pick me up. You see, I know I'm imperfect, but I know that I'm worth it. And every day I've been searching for an end to this hurting. I know I'm here for a reason, so I'm searching for meaning, and I'm ready for your teaching. So I'm here for the healing, and I know sickness exists in the mind, and the more I seek I will find different ways to untie these binds. As I know I have made mistakes in the past, and this situation won't last, cause another one's approaching it fast. Love is the answer, healing's the task. Show me the path of a healer. Teach me the ways of a shaman. Help me to feed all your children. Show me how to water. Your garden. Show me the path of a healer. Teach me the ways of a shaman. Help me to feed all your children. Show me how to water your garden and feel. Fill me, guide me, show me the way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Night TV presenting Charmain Berry on the telly. And the date today is the 24th of October. And I have with me today two really special guests. Today, the emphasis is on mental health and mental well-being. And I thought it would be really great to explore one of the most commonly offered psychotherapies through the NHS at the moment as a treatment of choice, which is cognitive behavioural therapy. And I thought it would be great to really explore what that is and who it may help. And I have with me Matthew Riley today as one of my guests. He's actually a CBT therapist and an EMDR therapist as well, working in the NHS and privately. And I also have joining me Caroline Doige, who is an artist, British artist, who's developed a really helpful colouring book for adults, which really helps us explore the main premise of CBT, which surrounds our connection to our unhelpful thinking patterns. So I'm really excited about this and really happy to welcome the first guest, Matthew Riley. Hello, Matthew. Hi, good morning.
Hi, sorry, I was a bit slow there with the old technology. I had to press a few buttons, but thanks for having me.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, really happy that you're here, Danny. And you're joining us from Prestwich. You're in Manchester.
I am. I'd much rather be there with you in person, face to face.
No, well, you know, I'm pretty sure that that's going to happen at some point.
Okay.
We actually get into the studio and actually manage to get onto the couch. Would be brilliant. So, Matthew, you have had a really interesting journey, both in your personal life and in your career, and as a father as well. And hopefully we're going to have time to sort of touch on all of these interesting things. But yeah, let's just talk a little bit about where you're at the moment and what it is that you're doing and what you're offering.
So yeah, I've been working for the NHS for about 15 years, 16 years now. That's a long time. So I started at the bottom, if you like, and worked my way up. So I've kind of been a support worker in child and adolescent mental health services. Then I trained as a mental health nurse at Salford Uni. And then I've been working in mental health services for a long time, on acute wards, on our later life services, and then more specialist services such as early intervention. I decided that I wanted to train as a therapist because I wanted to try and work more early intervention, so working with people more to enable recoveries and stuff. And in later mental health services, I wasn't seeing a lot of recovery within services, so I wanted to help people on their journeys, I suppose. And then I trained as a CBT therapist at Salford, later on as an Emdr therapist. Currently now I work for the NHS part-time, and then I run a very small private practice working with adopted children. So that's a passion of mine because my children are adopted. So I became interested in that kind of, I call it a gap, but more because there wasn't services available for adopted children, and sometimes they could get labels put on them, whereas actually what their issue is that they're adopted and they need extra support with that and to explore their past trauma maybe. So I do a little bit of that, and I work with medical professionals, GPs and hospital doctors as well. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm up to, working from home at the moment, which brings with it all its other challenges, such as mute and unmute and camera on, camera off. But you know, working throughout the pandemic with individuals, which it's been an interesting 10 months. Are we on? I lose track of the days.
Yeah, I've lost a little bit of track of it as well. So you're really working in two extremely important areas, helping families around adoption and adults who've been adopted. And it was really interesting. We had a little chat last night about the medical professionals that you're helping as well, as they're coming through the COVID crisis. So hopefully we'll get some time to touch on that also. But yeah, really, you know, you've also had a very, very, very difficult at times journey as well, which I think has also influenced your decision to come into healthcare and to help other people. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm an open book, as I said to you before, so I might need the odd prompt to tell me what you want me to talk about. But yeah, a number of years ago, I had a bit of a problem with alcohol. Yeah. Lots of negative thoughts about, my skills, lots of negative thoughts about my identity as well, and that I may be a disappointment to people because I was kind of coming to terms with sexuality, but also under a great deal of stress within the service that I worked for. And I ended up having nervous breakdown, or kind of like a little bit of a meltdown, and became very, very depressed, very, very anxious, and ended up having some therapy myself, which was a mixture of CBT and Emdr, and kind of that was something that really saved my life. I was training as a therapist at the time, but to actually engage in my own therapy and to explore my journey throughout life and explore some childhood events that happened, such as bullying, was really, really helpful in my sort of recovery. And I suppose gave me the tools that I've got now as a therapist as well. I would recommend that anybody that's had anything in their life happen to them, or anybody that's struggling with negative thoughts or just a sense of negativity, get some therapy, because there's no shame attached to that. I don't feel ashamed that I've had therapy, and it's readily available, and it saved my life. And I've had top-up therapy since. I've been to therapy. I'm no stranger to therapy, and it's been helpful. I think as a therapist, sometimes people think maybe you're immune from mental health problems. I've got this protective field around me. Nothing can get in here because I'm a therapist. I'm a professional. But actually, us professionals, we do have negative thoughts. We were talking just before we come on about negative thoughts in my head, and we all experience those thoughts. And I suppose it's how we respond to them that's really important. And I think what it was that taught me to respond to them was that CBT element of the therapy that I had of learning about what's going on in my head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a really, really important point, you know, that we're all experiencing this. We're all kind of having similar thought patterns, but there seems to be a shame around them if they seem to be negative or unhelpful, and we find that hard to share with people. So hide that, you know, and it's just the human experience. It's just how we are. And I think, you know, we talked last night a little bit about the difficulty that we have, because we just don't know about making the connection between, you know, earlier life experiences, the stuff that's happened to us in childhood, especially around normalized trauma. There's a lot of you know, just normal behaviors in schools and at home around discipline and expectation, and around bullying as well, like that sort of gets minimized also.
Part of just growing up, I was bullied, you know. And I think it took my therapist to say, well, actually, that's a huge thing, Matt. It's a huge part of your jigsaw. It's really important. It's kind of led to the development of these beliefs that you have about yourself. It's led to the development of that, you know, that not liking yourself. And I do a lot of that with my patients now, looking for those, you know, what people, that normalized trauma that you say, those mini events that have happened in their life, and then kind of educate them that actually that's really important. And we need all the pieces of that jigsaw to help you, you know, be the best you can be, but also to help you with those difficult thoughts and difficult feelings.
And you were saying that you know, you'd really found that a lot with the medical professionals and the doctors and even the professors and people that you've been working with most recently. And I think people in highly pressurized jobs like that might have had a lot of expectation on them growing up, or, you know, might have been exposed to bullying. They don't understand the link between that and their breakdown under pressure at work, because it's sort of very rarely about what's actually happening in the here and now. It's triggering something from before, triggering those beliefs. Yeah,
and I think there's a lot of kind of, you know, again, going back to professionals don't need a help. If you look at the statistics, 1 in 3, 1 in 2 people experiencing mental health. Probably if you did some research now during the pandemic, it's probably 1 in 1. And that, you know, medical professionals, nurses, doctors, you know, frontline staff, everybody's feeling that pinch of mental health. And you know, there should be no element of I can't seek help. So, you know, as the people, the news is saying NHS services are open, you can go and get, you know, your general practice, and you can go and get support, you know, in A&E if you need to. Well, the same goes for mental health services. We are open. NHS services are open. You know, if you're suffering with low mood, for example, if you've lost your job during, you know, the coronavirus pandemic and that's affected your mood and you've developed other issues, then please reach out and you know, refer yourself to some NHS services, or speak to your GP about referring you to NHS services for some therapy. And there has been investment in NHS services recently for therapy. I know in the service I work for, we've taken on new therapists. We're preparing for this, what I call a second pandemic. You know, of poor mental health. You know, looking at Manchester in particular, because we're from Manchester, we're in tier 3 now. That's going to really affect people, that isolation again, and that not being able to have that social contact. I know it's affected me, not being able to have social contact with other people, and I feel very lucky. I think we talked about that last night, having the tools to deal with that. But we've not all got those tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not sure everybody realizes that, you know, in some areas you can self-refer to the NHS, and there's certainly lots of charities and organisations. I know we're providing some things at the NIA Centre in Hume as well, and there's also more local counselling services as well. And it's just taking that first step, isn't it? Because I think, you know, the one thing that we agree on around the Cbt model is that understanding about the nature of our thoughts, I feel, is a very, very important first port of call, to understand the connection between that and the way that we feel. That connection between the thoughts and the emotions is absolutely imperative, and a real eye-opener for a lot of people that haven't had the chance to make that connection and understand that. So, and that's an important part of the Cbt model. What other kind of important components? And can we just talk a little bit about what the model is? I mean, cognitive behavioural therapy sounds like a real sort of long title and a lot to sort of wrap your head round.
Yeah, that's enough to scare anyone off, though. And the way I talk to my patients is, I try and keep things real. I talk to patients how I'd want to be talked to, and I want things explaining. So, CBT is they're just posh words, posh acronyms. It's a talking therapy. You're going to be talking to someone, and you're going to be looking at, I talk about getting a bit of a shopping list together. These are the problems that I've got, and working out a shared understanding of actually what's going on with the person. Developing this map really of where are things at. And you can use simple tools, you can use more complex tools, but at the end of the day, you're sat with a person trying to help them, but also kind of trying to engage in some change. So people come to therapy wanting to change something, and maybe they don't know what they want to change, and that's kind of seen as my job to help them find things that they might want to change. And I suppose going on to the model, cognitive, just a posh word for what's going on up here. And sometimes just educating someone around separating these things out, that thoughts are thoughts, feelings are feelings. Sometimes a lot of patients that I see will say that I feel a failure, I feel rubbish, I feel like I'm not good enough, and they're very difficult feelings to have. And I suppose if you help clients to reframe that and look at, well, how does that feel? I use the film Inside Out a lot with some of the patients I work with, to kind of look at, well, have they got feelings of failure and idiot and useless? What else could this be? What else could this be for you? What are you thinking at the time when you feel, these are thoughts? And once you kind of crack that with people, that this is stuff that's going on up here, and that thoughts are not facts. So a term that I use a lot with people, and sometimes people don't believe me. So again, it's working around, finding out what our thoughts are, and then linking to, well, if you're having a thought like that, how's that going to impact on the way that you're feeling? What are you doing? If I was at home with you now, what would I see you doing? So you're in bed all day, you're having thoughts that you're a failure and you're feeling sad. And how's that impacting on your body? What's kind of going on in your body at the moment? So you kind of got a bit of a flutter in your chest, and you feel heavy. And then about helping the patient connect all of that together, and looking at, well, this is a cycle that we're in, and we can we can work together, and we can change that cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it can be a real game changer for some people. That I used to find just sometimes understanding that you're not your thoughts, and like you say, just because you're thinking it doesn't make it true at all. In fact, all of that negative thinking is definitely untrue, because it's not who you really are. But then the body has that emotional response to it, because the body has to respond to it. And as you say, the behavioural element then is that it might demotivate us, if we're feeling helpless because of the kind of thinking that we're having, that we don't want to do anything. And my sort of opinion towards CBT's changed because it is what it is, and it's very good at sort of identifying these sorts of things in the here and now, and helping people to sort of change behaviours through that. But it seems, sorry, go on, Matthew.
It's very measured sometimes, and I think CBT, I might get told off for saying this, but I think CBT, it all depends on who's delivering it.
Yeah.
And I've had a great wealth of experience of working with a lot of different people, and CBT can be really rich. It can be delivered really well, but you've got to have certain skills to do it. And unfortunately, not everybody's got those skills, and it can become very manualized and be delivered like you're delivering a set of, cooking ingredients. And I think the more experience you get as a therapist, the more you're able to pull in from other aspects of other different third wave, they call them, but just newer therapies, and combine things. But it's all about being in the room with that person, and showing that kindness and that compassion to them, and not delivering a script where I'm gonna like you like a robot. And I have had patients come to me that have said, oh, well, this second bout of therapy has been so different, and I've learned so much. And when you've talked about the first bout, it's been that, well, it's been delivered. I wasn't asked for my input. I was just sort of dum 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 dum. You're done, out the door.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and we could talk about the political landscape around that and the way that some of the therapists were trained in the IAP scheme and all that kind of thing. But I think you're right. You know, CBT tends to really come alive when it's fused with other modalities as well. The bit I like about it is the education around the thoughts and the emotions. But you've also gone on to train in mindfulness. And you're infusing that into the CBT, and also the sort of importance of being compassion focused as well, and sort of helping people to connect with that deeper sense of who they are, that well of that sort of compassion and love within, and bringing that into the model as well.
I think some of the old language of CBT, you know, your thoughts are dysfunctional. You know, dysfunctional thought, you know, that can have an impact on a client. Oh, well, I've had therapy today and my therapist told me that my thoughts are dysfunctional, or, you know, and we're trying to change the language more now and looking at, you know, different ways of saying that. Well, I certainly am. And I know that there's research out there that backs that up. But, and, you know, I'm really lucky to be one day a week teaching on a program that is teaching this way of CBT. You know, these new aspects of linking in some compassion focused work, linking in mindfulness, and you know, moving forward with CBT. But it definitely, you know, I sometimes, you know, I'm pro CBT and I've been on the journey with CBT. Sometimes, you know, I've kind of just got, oh, it's really tough, this, why is this not doing what it says on the tin? But then I've had some really good kind of results which patients have been really pleased with. And I suppose as a therapist, I'm really lucky that I've got other modalities to go down. And I'm in the seat now, whereas a patient's in front of me, I can help them with what journey they might want to have. And it might be a blended journey. Well, I want CBT for this, I want EMDR for that. Or it might be just, actually, I just want to work on my thoughts and getting some more control over them or more understanding of them.
You know, and that's really enough for some people, you know, just to sort of get that sense of empowerment, again, with their own thinking. For some people, though, they need more than that. And I used to struggle with the sort of some of the limitations in CBT. I think when I did my training way back when, we were told specifically not to go into the history. Don't go into the childhood. Don't start rooting about in places that you won't have time to explore and to heal. And there was never the word trauma used in my training either. And over time, you know, it became more and more apparent that people needed a lot more than just sort of, you know, changing the way that they're thinking, because there was a very deep somatic experience and a reliving of trauma as well, which needed to be addressed. And that led me into training in EMDR, which is a trauma-focused model. And that's a pathway that you've taken as well, Matthew. So I just want to talk about EMDR, because that is another treatment of choice that is available in the NHS if you know to ask for it, really.
And it's more widely available. I think when I, you know, first I've had EMDR and it was like, what is this? What are these letters? What do they mean? And, you know, now where I work, we've got 11 EMDR therapists and other people wanting to do their training because of the power of it. I suppose the EMDR, the way I explain it to patients is I draw a circle and I draw a little box in the top hand of the circle, and I call that the hippocampus, so our filing cabinet of the brain, the library of the brain where stuff goes. And again, I link to the film Inside Out here again, where at the end of the day everything flushes down the tube and stuff. And I go through the patient things that might have happened in their life. So again, that normalized trauma, you know, what happened at school, what happened in childhood, oh, bit of bullying, bit of this, bit of that, and I put lines in the circle. And then basically what we're showing a full circle, and we're showing that actually these things have been too distressing for you to get into the hippocampus, and therefore they're floating around and they're causing these symptoms of anxiety, this symptom of shame, maybe low mood, guilt, you know, thoughts of it's my fault, I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have done that. And what we need to do is we need to tackle each one of these events and move them forward using the EMDR, which I always find a bit tougher to explain what that actually is. I always find just doing it with people. Say again, Charmain.
Yeah, it is difficult to explain, because even in the model, they're a little bit vague, you know, with the adaptive information processor you know, that we're sort of linking up and kind of activating this part of the brain that just knows how to heal, which is pretty incredible, but a bit vague. I think it's connecting us up to our higher selves and higher levels of consciousness and bringing that sort of true thing. But yeah, it is difficult to explain to people, and you know, and it's a bit tricky to get your head around while you're doing it, because it seems a little bit like voodoo. Like,
yeah, one of my colleagues said that when she trained that, she said, "Oh, Matt, what is this witchcraft that you've got me involved in?" And most of the colleagues that I work with now, who are all CBT trained, are now doing EMDR, and they're like, "I'm doing that blended approach." And when you talk about your training, that you weren't ever like, you know, trauma was a bit of a, you know, don't involve that. That's not how I work, or how I was kind of taught. So trauma is a big part, or I go down the line of, you know, what bad stuff might have happened in life, and kind of so that they can tell me the stuff that they've normalized, and we can sort of, so that's a really important part. Do we need to explore that? Do we not? You know, sometimes it's just good for people just to say this happened, and that I don't need any treatment on it. Just actually telling you, you know, and it allowed me to feel better. And some of the cognitive models now allow that sense of trauma. So, you know, the social anxiety model, you know, allows for trauma on there, and stuff that's happened in people's past. Wow. But certainly that's part of my assessment with people is, you know, what's happened in life, getting that full picture. Yeah. I don't want to use the full, you know, the longitudinal formulation word, but just getting a map of what's happened to a person, and sharing that with the person. You know, look at all this stuff here, and you know, where do we need to go first? What's most important, and helping them make the links.
Yeah, and moving away from, you know, what's wrong with you, to let's look at what's happened to you, you know, so that we can make sense of how you're feeling, because we understand that these traumatic events get laid down, like you say, in a way that the brain can't process it. So we literally have these memories, if you like, kind of on these memory networks floating around, causing symptoms that have all been labeled as mental health disorders and all these kind of labels, when actually it's the stuff that we've not been able to process from before. And EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, really helps to sort of capture those memories and clear them effectively. Is that how you would?
Yeah, and obviously it's called eye movement, but you can use lots of different forms. So, you know, I use a pair of headphones that give you a conduction, and they give you a tap here. And I found that, you know, that's worked really well, because it's got the eyes moving at the same time. It's got a bit of a stimulation here as well. And the more work you give the brain to do the taxing and stuff, the more the memories process, the quicker they process, just a fancy word for moving forward. So, you know, you might play through it in your head while you're having the stimulation, which can be, you know, something like this or something like this. So since we've moved online, we're doing a lot of this, and a bit of therapist talking. And the idea is you reducing the distress. So it can seem a little bit like you're giving it marks out of 10 sometimes, but that's the way to show that actually the distress of this memory's moved forward. So you might have a memory of bullying as a child. You talk to the therapist about it, then you do the processing, whatever that might look like. You will talk to the therapist for a short time, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, and then what will happen is the distress would come down. And then you've got those questions of what's going on here. I'm not feeling anxious anymore. I'm not feeling low in my mood anymore. It wasn't. Oh, and that's the important thing. You change the way you think about the memory. So a bullying thing. So I use the bullying one because that was one of my early life events. Bullied. You know, there's something wrong with me. Actually, I'm okay now. And in my mind, I went through the incident of bullying, and in the end, you know, powerful imagery of just attacked this bully on the head with a shatter hammer from the 135 bus, and this bully just kind of disappeared. Whoosh. And then I talk about it now, and it just means nothing. But at the time, you know, I was shaking in front of my therapist. I couldn't talk about it. It was a really big part of my life. And actually now it's just like, yeah, it's fine. And it's been really rewarding for me as a therapist to see that with other patients now, that, wow, I'm not feeling that. And then once you've cleared early memories and helped those memories move forwards, moving the other memories forwards of that kind of path, if you like, can really empower people and really help them change to be the best that they want to be and go on. And, you know, a bit like you said, higher power, I see it as a little bit like an electrical surge in the brain, where bits of the brain are talking to each other and saying, yeah, you can do this, you're brilliant, you're fantastic. And they're positive words that maybe as human beings we don't often say to ourselves, and they feel a little bit uncomfortable. And you know, we should aim to say positive things to ourselves.
Yeah, the truth of who we really, really are, you know, and that's what Emdr does. It kind of undoes the negative meaning that was drawn from that horrible thing that happened to us, that we must have deserved it and we're unlovable, and those kinds of like really deep core beliefs that get laid down. And the Emdr can just help us to undo that and get back to reality, the truth of who we are, because none of us are bad in essence, but we've had experiences that make us believe that, and that has a huge impact on the way that we live.
And that's where the CBT comes in, is just educating ourselves, our fellow human beings, that the just thoughts that are going on in your head, just unhelpful ways of thinking, or, you know, how else could we think differently about this?
Absolutely. We're going to explore that a little bit more with the next guest in about 10 minutes or so.
Have we been talking for that long? Wow.
Yeah. Because she's created a book that really helps people connect with that.
And I saw a little snippet of it, and I'm kind of thinking maybe me and Caroline could talk about that later, because maybe I could get a few copies and I could start, you know, using that as a helpful behaviour for people. Let's look at this together, because I just saw one little bit of it and I got a little bit excited, because I was like, we need more of these kind of things, more of these kind of creative. You know, there are a lot of books out there, you know, which you can see on my bookshelf behind, you know, but there are not a lot of creative approaches, and I looked at it and I was like, it looked quite good, so I'm quite excited to see that.
It's brilliant. So yeah, I thought it would also be amazing, Matthew, if you could share a little bit about your journey with Chris, with your partner, and your two sons, and the process that you've been through. Because I know, you know, you've adopted two young boys, and you've also, that's kind of spurred on an interest in you to help people in similar situations, adults and children as well. And that has been an incredible journey. Absolutely.
So I talked about like difficulties with sexuality. There was different difficulties accepting that, I suppose, and there were difficulties around that for me. And then, you know, I met Chris, and me and Chris have been together a long time, and he supported me through my mental health crisis, if you like, or mental health difficulties, and supported me to get help and to get therapy, and was there in the deepest and the darkest kind of times, taking me to therapy appointments. Really supported me through a really difficult time, and I'll always be thankful for him to that. But I get a sense, after recovering from those mental health issues and those difficulties, it was a sense of, well, I won't be able to have children. A, I'm gay, and B, I've had mental health problems, so, you know, that won't happen. And we sort of talked about it for a long time, and it was something that we both wanted to do, but I was kind of quite, won't happen, you know, because it just won't. And we went for a meeting with a social worker who became our social worker after the meeting, and we said, you know, we're a complex couple. Chris had a lot of debt. I'd had some problems, and it was kind of like, she was like, no worries, you know, I'll take you on. And she took us on, and she sort of became a bit of a therapist for us, really, because you had to have like a lot of appointments with the social worker and a lot of discussion around you and what you can give as a family. And she was just really supportive, even though we'd had some difficulties, and actually had difficulties that had made us better people, and had, you know, made Chris more savvy with money and more careful, had made me more maybe intuitive to other people's problems, you know, more caring and compassionate towards myself, therefore making me more caring and compassionate towards others. And we went on about a year journey, I think it was, to adopt, and it was a really seamless process. It was, you know, as a gay couple, we thought we might come across barriers, we might come across difficulties, and we didn't. We had our social worker in our corner fighting any battles that came up, She was amazing. And during our adoption, she actually got pregnant with her first child. So that was quite funny. When we went to court to finalise the adoption, she was just about to give birth. So we adopted our first child, Jack. And then we adopted again later. We adopted his brother. And then, we've been living quite happily since.
Yeah. Beautiful. It's been a really beautiful journey to see unfolding. Like, you've created this really gorgeous family, and I love how you're sort of like juggling everything. And you said, like, as a professional, you really have learned how to take care of yourself and prioritize time for you. You're an enthusiastic runner, do a lot of running, and
the kids run as well. They run with us. The kids are quite active. They go swimming and stuff. But yeah, running helps with my mental health. Again, it's another one of those maybe more creative behaviours that we can do that helps. I'm running. I'm not fast. I'm not talking running here and elite speeds, but just plodding along at the back with my friend, having a chat. And people waiting for me at the other end saying, "Come on, Matt, we're trying to get round a 10k route here," and I'm too busy gassing. But also a big believer in the park run ethos, which unfortunately we're not able to do at the moment, but we'll be back one day soon. So met loads of friends through that, and again, connection, that social connection, which is missing from all our lives at the moment, is really, really difficult to do without.
Absolutely, it's going to be having a huge impact on people, no doubt. And as we're coming towards the end of the interview, it might be a good time to link that to helping people know what they can do to find help, and what the options are for reaching out and getting support. Are you offering private sessions, Matthew? Is that something that you're doing, or is
I do, but I wouldn't want to say contact me, because I've literally got a waiting list, and it's that kind of self-care stuff. So I'm actually oversubscribed at the moment, which is difficult, because people contact me, people recommend me, which is brilliant. Last year I wasn't in a situation where I was turning people away, but now I do kind of say no to people, but happy for people to contact me, and I can signpost them to other really experienced therapists that I work with.
Right. Also the BABCP register. The BABCP, the governing body for CBT. So there's a register there of all the private psychotherapy, CBT therapists, if people particularly wanted to engage with CBT. And then there's also the BACP register, which is the governing body for counsellors. And there could be CBT focused counsellors in there. It's all a little bit of a minefield, isn't it? Like knowing where to start and where to go. But there's always the GP as well.
The GP for NHS service, not everyone can. I know some private therapists, offer discounted rates, and they try really hard to help people.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the NHS, you've got waiting lists, and that's really difficult as well. But just Google IAPT in your computer, and that will kind of bring up local services. Some services you can refer to directly. So, I know Bolton services you can refer direct, and you can just do an assessment online and you can refer direct. Some services in Tameside you can do that with. Some services you can't self-refer, and you have to go through the GP. So I suppose it's finding out what your area are offering, but every area in the country has an IAP service, which has access to counselling, CBT, EMDR, mindfulness.
And there's a whole world of self-help material out there as well. Is it getselfhelp.org? They've got so many amazing tools and worksheets and information.
All free.
It's all free on getselfhelp.org. And there are plenty of like really good books as well. There's the Overcoming series. Yeah. There's a fantastic first port of call. There is a lot of information available out there, and maybe you could get in touch with Mind as well.
Yeah, Mind. And there's the CCI intervention. So again, just Google CCI interventions. It's the first hit that comes up. That can take you to lots of self-help workbooks that you can do on low mood, self-esteem. There's a compassion one, which I did early this year as myself, just had a look at it, kind of filled it in, and it just really can just lead to some changes in maybe the way that you're thinking about things, and teach you more compassionate skills for yourself. So that's a real one I've used myself and one I'm using with my patients now as well. It's a really good module by module. You can just take your time, you can fill it in online, it saves, you can delete it. It's, you know, it's just for you.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you. Well, thank you, Matt.
It's been my pleasure. I cannot believe we've been talking for that amount of time. It seems like minutes.
It goes really quickly, doesn't it? I'm sure we could be here all day as well, because we've just scratched the surface really on this huge topic. And hopefully we'll have you back at some point. Maybe we could explore more around the EMDR. And
It'd be my pleasure to come back. It's really nice to catch up. But again, it'd be really nice to be able to give you a cuddle and a hug and stuff, which we're not allowed to do with anyone apart from the people you live with. I'm itching to get to see real people again.
Yeah, same here. It'll be here before we know it. Thank you so much. And now it's time for us to cut away to Christina Batty's weekly Mayan calendar update report, which I'm sure is pretty interesting. So enjoy. See you in a minute.
Hi and welcome to your Galactic Dream Spell forecast for this coming week today, which is Saturday the 24th of October. So what is going on within the Galactic Dream Spell calendar this week? Well, today is the Red Magnetic Moon Day, which is the beginning of the final castle within this 9-month Tolkien spin. So we are entering into the final phase of this process that began on the 30th of March and will complete on December the 14th. So the red moon energy is where we begin, and then we'll shift into White Wind, then into Blue Eagle, and then into Yellow Star to complete the series. So red moon is where we begin, and red, as always, is that initiation. So it's beginning the process of this final phase. The red moon energy is the moon always represents the divine feminine, the feminine energy. It's also really responsive to the waters. So when we think of the red moon energy, we're thinking of the waters, the universal waters that flow within us. This beautiful planet that we live on is 70% water, and as are our bodies. Water is a fundamental aspect of life, and we are intrinsically linked with these waters. The water stores all of the memory within us. So when we are working with those energies, we can feel some of our emotions coming up really strongly. So this next 13 days is a really beautiful opportunity to really allow some of the depths of what's within us to bubble up to the surface. And if we can hold that position of just observing and allowing those emotions to come through and flow through us, then we can allow some really deep and profound healing to come into place. Now, this is coupled with that we've just gone into Scorpio within the Western astrology calendar. So we've got double water energy. Scorpio is a water sign. So we've got double water energy that's really amplifying and giving more potential for us to really work with the waters that are within ourselves. It's a beautiful opportunity to really connect with the waters that are around us, to give gratitude and thanks to the water that is within your local town or city, and to maybe even send prayers or to give gratitude back to the waters that you've touched across your life. Even just giving gratitude to the water that flows from your taps is just really just anchoring in and connecting more and more deeply with that water spirit. So within ourselves, we're going to be working with this for the next 13 days. And today is magnetic, which means it is the first tone of this wave spell. And every time that we come into the first tone, there's always an opportunity to get a glimpse of what's coming for us over this next coming 13 days. So being able to see perhaps what the universe brings you, what is being shown to you, how can you interpret what is happening? Perhaps something may trigger you, or you might bump into an old friend that you've not seen in a while. Something may happen that catches your attention, and just noticing how you're feeling today will give you an indication of where you can go within these next 13 days. Really recommend, as ever, loads of journaling, allowing yourself to express all of the parts of your system, to be able to allow more and more of yourself to be emerged, and allowing more of that beautiful energy to be released. wishing you a very beautiful and cosmic wave spell as we go into this final run up until December the 14th. And yeah, I'll be back next week to give you an update on what is happening as we move forward in this red moon wave spell and transitioning into the white wind. So have a beautiful, beautiful red moon week with lots and lots of water energy. Sending you lots of love. Goodbye. Hi and welcome to your...
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much, Christina, for this week's Mayan calendar update report. And thank you to Matthew, who was our first guest there. He's just shared some really, really amazing information about CBT and Emdr. And keeping on that theme now, I'm really happy to say that we're being joined by Caroline Doige.
Hello.
And Caroline. Caroline is a British artist who has used her creative kind of intuition and skill and knowledge and combined that with mental health and created a book, which we're going to talk about, as a way of like really helping people to tap into thought processes, which is really amazing. Welcome to the show, Caroline. Thank you so much for joining us here. This is your book. I'm just going to show that. We'll show it again in a little while. It's really great. So Caroline, you've had an interesting journey, and through which you yourself encountered some, I always go like this with mental health because we want to reframe this as the human experience, yeah? But you had some experiences along the way that led you into a process of recovery. Are you okay just to say a little bit about that? And
absolutely. And firstly, I'd like to say Matt's conversation was absolutely brilliant. And it's always interesting to find out where people have come from and their journeys and how they've found out about their mental health. So for me, because I dismissed a lot of my mental health, I didn't even know I had mental health issues until very, very late on in my life, because I had taught myself to suppress them pretty much, and I wasn't even aware of them. And with Matt talking about what happened to him, and bullying is a normal one at school. We kind of always go through it. For me, something happened when I was very young, and I didn't have words to express it. And in essence, my mother disappeared, and I can't go into what actually happened, but she came back, but she wasn't the same when she came back. And it was difficult because I, as a child, have no understanding of what I thought and felt at the time. Me as an adult and my experiences now, I can kind of put words on it and I can be very adult about what may or may not have happened. But, with my child thought processes, I have no idea what I actually thought and what was going through my head at that time. And going forward, I've had other things happen. I've had other traumas happen. Some of them female in nature, and you carry on just trying to make the best of it in life quite often. And that's what I did, because I wasn't in tune with any of my emotions. I wasn't attached to any of them. I would just suppress them all for such a long time. And I've had problems with alcohol as well, and now I don't drink. I don't drink because it's helpful to me to not drink and to be in more control of who I am and what I am. And one of the things Matt brought up, which is absolutely brilliant, is that level of self-compassion. Lots of us run around and beat ourselves up with a stick, and I did it for ages. I needed to be that perfectionist. I needed to be absolutely perfect at everything. And now I don't, because I understand the role of self-compassion. I understand I am just a human being, and I really appreciate that about myself, and I let other people around me be complete human beings as well. It's really, really important. So my recovery journey started very late on in my life, and I've learned a lot about who I am and what I am. I've learned to love myself, and that's been an important thing. Again, lots of people, they put themselves at the bottom and they do everything for other people all of the time because they're not worth it. Every single person is worth it, and I know that I've now got self-worth. I care about myself, and I actually like who I am today compared to what I was like, and all of these things have, created the situation where I now have good mental health, and I know when it's going, I know when I need to do things to help myself, and I know when I can be there and supportive of other people, but I also know where the boundary is and where it's like, well, actually, no, I need to take care of myself today, which I think Matt said as well about going running. You know, some of us need to go running. I'm not a runner, but I need to do art. You know, there's times when I just need to lock myself away and splash things around on a piece of paper, because it's important to me to have that outlet and that time and space for me to sort things out in my head. So yeah, I mean, my journey's been very interesting over the last 4 or 5 years, and I've loved it because there's so many different therapies out there that can be really helpful, and also because of it, I know through my lived experience I can support and help other people, so that's massively important to me.
That's so inspiring. Absolutely wonderful. I'm curious about whether there were any particular therapies or books or philosophies or people that came along for you on that journey that inspired you or took you into certain directions that really helped with your recovery? Or was it through your art? Like, this was something that you kind of discovered through your own expression?
So I think it's quite similar to what Matt says. You know, not one tool can fix every single person. We're all so unique. You know, I believe it's several different tools. You know, so CBT has been a massive part of that, and I've gone through CBT a couple of times, and a couple of times similar to Matt. You know, there's times when it's been quite robotic and it doesn't make sense to you, and there's times when there's empathy involved in it, and it does, you know. And then you know, for me, 12-step programs are a big part of my life as well. You know, that's been very helpful. And self-compassion, I did go through a therapy session where the person immediately put me on a self-compassion route, and that's, again, hugely important when you're dealing with someone who thinks perfection is the only way to survive in life. You need to learn that actually, no, it's not. And you can be human, and that's completely acceptable. So definitely several different things.
Yeah, that's really good to know, you know, and it's good to encourage people to try all these different things. You know, sometimes I've heard people say that I've tried therapy or I've tried counselling, it does not work for me, and sort of give up on that journey then, which is, you know, just which sort of creates a lot of hopelessness. So just to keep going and keep exploring, because there are so many options out there, like there's so much available to us. So how was it you discovered yourself as an artist, and how did you know particularly that it was art, how art could help you through the recovery as well? What was that like?
Yeah, so it's interesting with my art, actually. I've always been quite creative, but again, suppressed it when I was quite young, you know, and admittedly, and it comes down to, I can specifically say that there was one teacher who told me that I didn't have any original ideas, so I couldn't do art A-level. So I didn't go on and do art A-level for that reason. And now I realise it's because I was so closed off to everything had to be in line and perfect that she couldn't see my creativeness. But that again was to do with my childhood, my upbringing. And actually, when I got away from those things, like, my creativeness did come out. So for me, one of my recovery things I've done was actually, I took a year out of work. I saved up a whole lot of money. I took a year out of work and I went back to university and I did an art foundation course for fun, basically for fun, to enjoy myself, to explore my creativity, to, you know, and from that different art systems have come out that I didn't even know I liked or enjoyed. So that's been hugely important. And my art, it's, again, one of my traumas that did happen was when I did not have any words to put into that trauma. So I think quite early on, through the self-compassion and through the 12-step stuff, I realized that I somehow needed to connect into that child. And I know that there's inner child therapy as well. And I needed to somehow connect into that child. And I realized to do that, the only way was to use art. I couldn't use words because I could not attach words to that period in my life, but I could attach art. I could attach the, you know, I did use those things. So it's quite quite a psychological kind of process to realize that to connect into that person who needed some work doing and some help and support, I used art to then connect to my inner child, I will call it.
That's really wonderful. Yeah, because, you know, sometimes things happen to us before we've got language, before we know how to. And often when things are happening, we can't make any sense out of it. It's just, you know, it's unbelievable what's happening, and we can't categorize that in any way. So it sort of gets laid down in our systems without the language, as you say, without the words. It makes it very, very difficult for us to articulate that later on. So I just, you know, it's incredible how you made that connection. And just to let people know, your art is expressed through painting and drawing, through different kind of mediums. I had a look at your website. It's really good work. Really like the stuff that you've got on there. What helped you, or, you know, sort of what inspired you to link CBT particularly with the art?
I think this is via a conversation with art therapists. Art therapists very much look at this work, but there's also generally it's people who've got quite high level mental health needs are given art therapy. And I realized that me, you know, I have anxiety and depression. I'm well aware that I have anxiety and depression. So it doesn't need art therapy, but it did need some connection via the art. And I realized with art, when you're sitting down and drawing, things subconsciously go into your head. They just somehow form in your head, and they make these connections that then suddenly you can then see the pattern later on that you couldn't see before you did the art. And I realized there's this connection. And for low level mental health issues, and let's not call them issues anyway, because it's just thought processes half the time. We think something and then react on it, and actually we didn't need to take that thought. You know, that thought, we could have just gone, you know what, go away. You know, we could have just done that, but we didn't. We take that thought and then react to it and act on it. So what I was looking at trying to find a way to subconsciously connect, to sitting there going, actually, we don't need to think like that. And a nice soft way of doing it, I found, was like drawing it out. You know, just writing the word out sometimes in some nice fancy colouring subconsciously makes you then go, okay, so I've actually had that thought. Maybe I don't need to react on it next time I do have that thought, you know. And, you know, journaling is quite a similar route. You journal and you write down your thoughts, and then you write down how you thought about it and what you did because of it. And then next time, because it's now in your subconscious, when you get to that situation again, you kind of stop and go, oh, let's just take a step back. Let's respond to it. Let's not react to it immediately, which is a lot of where the CBT comes in. And so what I'm looking at, and what I'm very conscious in, is that you can do the same, but with art. So you can sit there and draw a catastrophic situation, and then next time when you actually hit something where your thoughts kind of go off into catastrophic mode, you can sit there and go, oh, just a minute, let me take a step back and respond to that. We don't have to react to it straight away. And it's that connection, because some people are great at writing. Me, I'm not so great at writing. My skill set is in art. You know, I can write stuff if I want to, but actually, you know, 50% of this country responds to things that is not the written word. So I wanted to connect something else that other people could look at and connect into. So that was really my focus on looking at this stuff. Also massively helped me. You know, when I sat there, you know, and I was looking at my inner child stuff, I was like, you know, it made sense when this is my thought process. Oh, and then slowly, like, I would be able to step back and respond to it, not react to it. And it wasn't through anything else other than I'd drawn something a bit earlier in the day, or I'd drawn something the day before. So I knew that there was this process where if you drew it, if you made art out of it, it goes into your mind. It does help.
Yeah, it's like a sort of a change in the relationship with it. you just used the word catastrophic, which is one of the thinking styles which we'll come to in a minute, but instead of having that catastrophic thought, if we're actually looking at the word and colouring it in and kind of like minimizing the impact of it and the scariness of it, can really, really help. So yeah, in CBT, we understand, and in other therapy approaches as well, that there's actually themes and categories and styles that we call sort of thinking styles within the repertoire of all of these kinds of thoughts. And some of them are labeled as core beliefs. And then we have this sort of automatic thinking, the stuff that we hear pretty much constantly when we start to tune into it, which is there as well. And there's actual sort of different styles to that. One of which you've already mentioned, catastrophic thinking style, which is where we might get a bill through the door for something that we can't pay, and then we go straight to an image of us being homeless on the street with, and starving. So we're catastrophizing that. Can we just talk around some of what the other styles are, Caroline? Just because it might help people just to identify what theirs are.
So I'm going to put a sheet up on the screen in a minute, but this is the basis of this book that I put there. So my first book, I'm hoping it's my first book, is to connect these thinking styles, which we all have. Every single one of us has. It's how we react to it. And it's each page of this book is one of those thinking styles, and it goes through what the thinking style is, and it goes through ways and means of, looking at the evidence or just not actioning that thinking style and looking at what else you could do instead of reacting to that thinking style. So this is very much CBT, and I'm just going to now put it up on the screen for people to see. Great, here we go. So these are some of the thinking styles. This is very much CBT, and I've picturized it in essence, basically. So one of the thinking styles I think we've already done is catastrophic thinking, and I think that was a great explanation of catastrophic thinking. Something happens, and let's be honest, life is life, it's not always perfect. Something happens, and our brain will immediately go into the worst possible scenario that could possibly ever happen, like we're on the street and we're homeless, and in essence, we don't have to think like that, because, what is the evidence to that? What's the balanced approach to that? And within the book, it goes through a catastrophic thinking, which is that a person has texted someone, but they haven't got a reply in the amount of time they think that they should have a reply in. And you automatically think that they've had an accident. But actually, you can stop that in its tracks, and you can kind of say, well, what's the evidence to that? They might just be busy. They're also human beings. Other things is going on in their life. They might just be busy. And it's good to draw that out and realize that, other things could happen that mean that catastrophic scenario that's been thought up in your head isn't actually going to happen. And you don't need to think what that catastrophic thought is. You can sit there and go, okay, that might happen, but it's not going to, something else could happen. There's other ways of doing it. It's not a black and white world that, you've got loads of choices throughout all of these things. So that's one of the thinking styles. Another one, a lot of people call it black and white thinking. Some people call it all or nothing thinking. So this happened actually as children. We are quite black and white in our thinking because we haven't got the capacity to have so many different choices. But as adults, when we get older, we can actually see all the grey areas in between, and this is what the page in the book looks at. What are the grey areas? What are the different choices you've got? It's a lot easier to give ourselves two choices, but we don't need to. We can actually give ourselves several other choices within a situation. And it's for us to think through what they are. Once you have this, oh, well, we can only do this, which is a really bad choice, or we can do that, which is a really positive choice, but actually that's not so good for us. Or, you can always give yourself different choices. And the page in the book looks at that and looks at, give yourself choice, again, self-compassion, you don't need to, it doesn't have to be perfect. So therefore, can you give yourself choice, give yourself a way out. Another one is jumping to conclusions. You know, you automatically think, you know, someone hasn't texted you back, oh, they really dislike me. You know, you can sometimes think that, you know, your brain will switch automatically into that. And again, it probably isn't that case. You know, I know it's the same example, but it probably isn't the case. It's like they haven't got time to text you back at that one moment in time, you know. And I think, you know, jumping to conclusions, there's lots of that going on as well at the moment with the pandemic. It's kind of quite difficult. You know, you think something's going to happen. But, you know, if you look back at some of the things that you thought were going to happen and they haven't, you know, you can see that jump into that conclusion hasn't actually helped you see what's going on. Another one is definitely negative focus. Now, I do this all the time. You know, one thing goes really badly in a day and you just think, oh, yeah, why did that happen to me? You know, and all of that thing. And you're not even looking at all the positive things. Now, an interesting one for me to get over this is that I do a gratitude list at night. And literally I think about one thing that I'm grateful for at night. I don't even write it down. I just go to sleep on remembering that one thing that I'm grateful for tonight. And there's always something that's happened in the day that you can be grateful for. Me, it's normally all the traffic lights are on green when you go somewhere. I'm like, yes, you know, come bring it on. Or you know, the sun's been shining today and it hasn't been raining. It can be as simple as that, or it can be as massive as that. Actually, someone's given me a present. That's phenomenal. That's really nice and sweet. But it, you know, you changing your focus from that one thing that's gone bad to any number of things that actually have gone well for you during the day actually really can help you to start seeing the positives in life and get you out of the spiral that you go down into when you've got the negative focus. Another one is labeling. Now, again, loads of people do this because it's very easy to put things and people in boxes to make it easier for us to manage and think about. But we don't need to. We don't need to do that, you know, and we can label ourselves. So I quite often, if someone says to me, oh, I'm being so stupid, I'm like, no, you've just been human. You've just made a choice. It might have been a bad choice, but you've just been human. Don't label yourself as stupid. You are not stupid, you know. And I'm very passionate about this to the point that people are like, oh, don't tell that to me, because they can't cope with the fact that they actually are always labeling themselves as stupid. And it's hard. Get out of the habit of doing that. Get out of the habit of being negative to yourself, because you're an amazing human being. You know, with all of the things that you've got going on, we make mistakes. We are human. Comes back to the self-compassion element, that one, definitely. Mental focus is an interesting one as well, I find. So this is very much where you think a certain situation will always happen exactly the same way. So something happens and you're like, well, this is the conclusion to that because that happened last time. And you automatically then end up going in that line and going towards that because you're focusing on it, because you've told yourself already that you're going in that direction. And, you know, your mental filter will just kick in and tell you that this is the only way you're heading because of this certain situation. And it is definitely about expanding up again and looking at things in a different way, which you can always do. You can always do. Now, living by fixed rules. Okay, I do this all the time and it's brilliant because I've done this so often now. All of my friends do it back to me, which is absolutely great. But I try really hard not to say the word should, ought, or must. I try so hard not to do it, because the minute you tell yourself that you should do something is the minute you start giving yourself choices. And then you get resentful, because if you should do it and you then do it and then you really dislike doing it, you know, it really isn't good for you or good for the other person you're doing it for, in fact. So I always check with myself. When I say the word should in my head, I always check with myself and I think, well, actually, do I want to do it? Is it appropriate for me to do it? And then if it is, and therefore it's a good thing for me to do, then that's fine, I'll go and do it. But then I've made the choice to do it instead of telling myself I have to do it. So very much this should word. So I'm very passionate about when people say should, I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure you should? And what's great, like I say, is some of my friends are now kind of saying, oh, just a minute, you said the word should. Are you sure? So it's good because, you know, when you embed these things into your life, you're like, your friends start kind of talking to you about it and seeing the differences as well, which is great. The last one, and there are loads more, there's not just these 8 on here, there's 10, 15, there's loads more of these styles, but another of them is Unreal Ideals. So, you know, you might want to be the astronaut, but let's be honest, we're not always going to be the astronaut. And I think that, you know, there's this inbuilt idea that we'll all be pop stars or we'll all be the next best, you know, footballer in life. It's kind of unreal. You know, we're not all going to get there, but being happy with your life, you know, being content with your life and going to the best you can be with the skill sets you've got and appreciating the skill sets you've got is really important. You know, we're not all going to be world-class artists. We're definitely not, for me, I'm never going to be the best fiction writer in the world. I know I'm not, but I don't need to go there because I know that that's not on my skill set. So, you know, pamper to your best skill sets and use the best skill sets you've got to the best of your ability. You don't need to then sit there and go, well, you know, this isn't good enough. I need to do X, Y, and Z because I need to be that astronaut. You don't, you know, work out what your real ideal is for you and find your contentment in that, you know, and again, this is what comes out in the book, you know, each page is explaining in pictorial what the unreal ideal is and then what you can actually think instead of going to the unreal ideal. So very much this is what the book is about, and thank you so much for letting me explain all of that. I'll just put this other slide up. This is where it doesn't work. A minute.
Can I just say that you explain it so well, Caroline?
Yeah. I live and breathe this stuff. I think that's the thing. I definitely live and breathe this stuff. So this is the other page, which I think's gone up now. Hopefully this is what you're seeing. This is, you know, what each page says. So when you've got catastrophic thinking, look at the evidence for it. You know, when you're thinking the black and white thoughts and you're only giving yourself 2 choices, look for the grey areas. You know, when you're jumping to conclusions, what's the real facts? What are the real facts on that one? What did I do next? Negative focus, look for the positives. My way of doing that is the gratitude list. Everyone else has their own way of doing things. When you're labeling, just be kind to yourself. Don't label yourself as stupid. No one's stupid. You know, you're a beautiful human being with all the things you've learnt in your life. Just be lovely to yourself, be kind, and that's definitely self-compassion there. When it's mental filter, when you know you're focusing on something very specific, look to the big picture. What is the surrounding things going on? What are the choices? And yeah, definitely when it's living by the fixed rules, when you say the should word, definitely look for a choice. You know, make a choice. Do you actually want to do it? And obviously unreal thinking, it's not great to compare. You know, people say that about social media all the time. Don't compare yourself to other people. You are unique. Be yourself on that front. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Those are my 2 slides. I'm not going to kill you with PowerPoint, but those are my 2 slides, and that's what the book is based on.
That's incredible. You know, I think anything that's helping us to get co-conscious, like aware of what it is that's actually influencing us, often governing the way and the choices and the things that we do and all our behaviors unconsciously, like we're not even aware of, you know, why we've made that decision, or we've done something that we feel we should do, either to sort of please somebody or to gain some validation or you know, whatever that is, to really stop and question ourselves, you know, about where are we just being in the flow of who we are? Where can we just be like accepting of what's going on instead of analytical or critical? There's a lot of criticism in there, isn't there? There's a lot of, it's very, you know, critically heavy, the way that we're communicating with ourselves in that way. And I think just the fact that we can sort of categorize it like this sort of shows just how generic it is for everybody. I'm sure everybody could relate to all, or at least some of those sort of thinking patterns, you know. I just encourage anybody to either by getting the book or just really looking into this, or spending some time, just taking some time out to actually listen.
Yeah.
And get an idea of what's going on there. It can be super, super, super powerful. Really, really, really powerful. And the book is definitely one way of doing that. What has creating this book meant for you, darling? What's this brought into your life, and how has it made you feel, and what's it like to know that it's out there and that it's helping people?
So it's really interesting, this book. I've had this book idea for probably about 5 years. And it's just been bubbling away. And I think one of the things in lockdown that turned up is that we all have a bit more time at home. What are we going to do with it? You know, lots of people are doing DIY, so am I. But I made a decision early on to actually do this book. I've had the idea for ages. Right, time to get on and do the book. What's really interesting is I've got a great support network, and someone in that support network suggested something called a well-being group. So this well-being group met for 8 weeks, for an hour, and there was kind of a structured process to it, but we were to bring a goal to the well-being group. Now, I realized for me, I'd had this idea, but the thing that was stopping me was fear. You know, I didn't want to put this idea out there. I didn't want to, you know, it was, you know, how would people react? You know, am I allowed to do this? So I utilized the amazing people within this well-being group to say, look, this is my goal. Help me towards it. Encourage me to get there. You know, and they did, and it was amazing. It was so powerful to just have that kind of support network during that period of time to actually get the book out there. And it pushed me, because I was accountable every week to kind of, I've done a bit more, you know, and there was a couple of weeks when I did nothing on the book, you know, but it really helped and supported me to actually get the book out and to overcome my fears as well, because I then had a kind of captured audience, bless them, that I pushed the ideas out to, and here are some of the pages, tell me your thoughts, you know. And it was really helpful, because it was a soft approach for me to start getting some of these things out there and getting the feedback I needed to make the book better, to create it into the professional book that it is now. So, you know, my journey through also my mental health of like, in terms of like looking at, oh, I'm so scared, I don't want to do this, to getting it out there was an interesting route to getting the book out there. And so for me, getting the book out there is a massive, absolutely massive, you know. My art has been very personal to me, you know, my art is absolutely personal to me. And it's very scary to kind of put something out there and ask people to pay for something that you've done, and I knew I needed to get over that barrier. So this was my first attempt for getting over that barrier, because we all have barriers, we all have things that in our minds that stop us wanting to achieve something really. And I recognized it as a barrier. And again, I think it comes back to, let's not label these mental health issues, because they're not. These are just things within our brains that tell us things that can stop us being the whole people that we can be, you know, that can stop us achieving stuff that actually would be amazing if we achieved, you know. And for me, this was definitely one of them. So getting this book out there and putting it out there is great, and getting the feedback from people, how it's helped them, you know, if it does, you know, it may help some people, it may not. That's the truth of it, you know. People who are definitely more word orientated, it probably isn't the tool for them, but all of these just add up to the tools that can help people to think through these situations and maybe come out and realize that they have got choices. So that, for me, the barrier of getting something out there and commercialized was huge. But I'm so pleased that I've managed to do it. I'm so grateful, and grateful to this well-being group that really helped me achieve that.
What a good idea, to form well-being groups and encourage people in that way, which is just tapping into what Matt was saying earlier on as well, as part of the CBT model, if you like, you know, quite early on, it's very good to identify, first of all, what needs to change, but also to set some goals within that. So if I was feeling well and happy, what would I be doing? And it could be, you know, maybe I would be inviting people around, whatever we could do, or I'd be going out into, you know, different social situations, or I would be putting my work out there, or I'd be changing my job, or whatever that could be, and then using that as a kind of a vehicle, as a way of understanding what needs to be cleared, what obstacles, thinking obstacles. I mean, we can look at, you know, all our difficulties relate down to the way that we're perceiving ourselves and we're perceiving the world, and if that's negative, then that creates obstacles and blockages to us being, like you said, the full expression of who we are. So to set yourself what might seem like an unachievable or a very, very frightening goal in the beginning, but then really use that as a way of understanding what gets triggered, what kind of thoughts kind of circle around that, so that we can heal them, you know, so that there isn't anything, there's only us stopping us, or only our thoughts stopping us, nothing else.
Yeah.
And what we tend to do also is kind of blame and project out and say, well, you know, if it wasn't raining, I'd be doing this, or if the government would get its act together, I'd be doing this, or if I had more money, then I would be doing this, or if I just had a bit more feedback, and all these sorts of things, the kind of if onlys as well that we project out, just, you know, really bringing that in and seeing where we are creating that ourselves as a way of avoiding. Avoidance is first port of call, isn't it, around fear? My dog's here. So it's absolutely wonderful, wonderful work. He's here having a good bark. Bless him, he's joining in as well. So, Caroline, how can people get your book? Where do they find it?
So it is on Amazon. I have gone down the Amazon route, but the book is called Our Thoughts. So all you need to do is Google Our Thoughts in any of the markets. It's all on every Amazon platform, and it will come up. It will be the first one in the list. So it is our thoughts, because it is our thoughts that kind of affect us. So that's how I've called it. So that's what you need to do, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the feedback from anyone who does buy it and what they think to it, and how it may or may not have helped them or made them think differently in the future. So it would be so great to have that feedback.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. And how can people access your other work as well as an artist?
Yeah, so there's a little more aspect to me, because obviously I'm unique in everything I do, and I just wanted to connect this into something that Matt said earlier. So there's loads of different ways to self-refer yourself to things that are happening in and around Manchester. I actually work for a charity and have done now for nearly 5 years, and I facilitate an anxiety and depression group. It was a drop-in group until about March, but there's all of these groups. It's through a charity called Self-Help Services, but there's all of these groups where you can just drop in and have a chat with people who experience anxiety and depression, and the conversation is around how you experience anxiety and depression, and each person helps each other out. Now, obviously, this has now gone online. So through a Facebook page for Self-Help Services, you can go to the peer groups and get a link, and you can go online, and there's a session every single day. But also with Self-Help Services, because it's such a big organization, such a big charity, on the page, which is selfhelpservices, all one word, .org.uk, there is a self-referral. So if you're in Manchester or you're in Stockport, you can self-refer yourself to then getting assessed, and they will then suggest different forms of therapy which are right for you. One of them is CBT, one of them is a sleep therapy, one of them is these drop-in groups. They also do short CBT courses and short wellbeing courses as well. So there's loads of different ways you can do it. So that's one thing that, you know, you can find some of me online. The other one is I do have a website. It's carolineart, all one word, .co.uk. I've got all of my art up there. Again, you know, putting it out there, just putting it out there. It's not the best stuff in the world, you know. I'm not the next Tracy Emmons. It's not going to happen, but I am who I am, and my art's up there, you know. And I talk about my book, and I've got a blog on there, and I talk about my mental health, and I talk about, you know, my route to trying to get through these barriers that I'm setting myself. And so, you know, out there's a website. You can go and Google me if you want to.
I just love that. I just love all that you're doing, and that sounds incredible. The self-help, what is it called again? Self-help org?
So self-help services, which is all one word, .org.uk, and you can self-refer yourself if you're in Manchester or Stockport on there.
That's great. Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, and I just want to thank you for what you're doing and all the work and what you're bringing and dedicating this time to helping others. It's absolutely amazing. And thank you for overcoming those obstacles and, you know, letting people see this and share this, because it's very, very, very important stuff. Caroline, it's been amazing having you on the show today. Thank you so much, and hopefully we can catch up again at some point and see how things are going, and I'm sure we're going to stay connected into the future.
I love that. And thank you so much for having me on here, and just, you know, enabling me just to talk more about the work that I'm doing. And I really want to catch up with Matt as well at some point. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, let's get a little meeting or something. And it's just wonderful. You explained it all so well, so thank you. It's important. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this week's show, and thank you to everybody who's been watching live. And thank you if you're watching this on stream later. You can always get in touch with me and Caroline and Matthew if you have any questions or anything else that you want to explore around CBT or Emdr or just mental health generally. We're here to help and to guide. So thank you, everybody, and see you all next week. Bye.